Welcome to a new episode of the Cartridge Club, where we discuss our game of the month with members of the Cartridge Club community. For the month of April, it's the Return of Zelda month, and this time around, the Cartridge Club played The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap. Joining me on the show, we have Adam, Atomic Bomb 1980, and StumptownRetro. If you played along, you can always share your own experiences in our community's Discord or across social media by using the hashtag Cartridge Club. Before I start the show, on behalf of the entire Cartridge Club community, I'd like to give a huge shout out to our Patreon Club backers like Joel Boyce, Buried on Mars, Christopher Orr, Dean Lasagna, Ross Ringo, and Caleb J. Ross. To our backers and Patreon supporters, thank you. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter for the Cartridge Club, please look at how you can do so at patreon.com/Cartridge Club.
So this is only my second time playing the Minish Cap. I played it when it first released because my connection with Nintendo growing up was mostly in the portable realm. My family didn't have Nintendo consoles except for the NES and then the Wii when I was in college. So most of my experiences with home consoles were at friends' house. But the portable games I've always had and I've always had a better connection with. So going back to the Minish Cap after 20 years, about 20 years now, it was interesting to see how it's so connected to every other Zelda. Like, it seems to take a lot of inspiration from, obviously, like A Link to the Past and things like that in its design. But it has like roll effects from like Ocarina of Time. It even has sound effects from Ocarina of Time for his Link, as well as like the Wind Waker's art style. And I really appreciate that. It's like this amazing amalgamation of everything that Zelda is in kind of like one game. And it helps that it's directed by the same guy who ended up directing Tears of the Kingdom later on. So it definitely shows that he has a love and care of the series from a long period of time, even back when he's working at Capcom.
They use the soundbite too from Mario 3, don't they? From when you play the ocarina to warp someplace, right? I think exactly. That's the warp whistle sound that they use.
It sounds like it, yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised. But honestly, this game is like, it's not difficult. There's not that many dungeons, but the dungeons are all clever. There's no wasted space in them, which I really appreciate. I feel like it's the perfect introductory Zelda for somebody who is brand new to the series, because it kind of gives you a little bit of everything and kind of goes a little overboard with some of the collectathon stuff. But that was really popular at that time for the Game Boy Advance. Like, you were dealing with like a lot of Pokemon games, and Capcom was a Mega Man Battle Network, which Inafune was a producer on this game. So it kind of makes sense that there's like these collectathon things in there. But if you bypass all of that, the game is like 5-6 hours long. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a minute. Adam, why don't we get your overall thoughts on the Minish Cap?
Well, he pretty much nailed everything that is my overall thoughts. I love that it's a mashup of all your favorite parts of all the other Zeldas. I love that it's a collection, like, where it has like the secrets of like Zelda 1, to where you'll see areas to be like, can I bomb this? Can I burn this tree? Can I do this or that? And you just have to try it to do it. Sometimes, like a lot of times in Minish Cap, they give you a little sign says, bombing not allowed or whatever, cause it cracks. And then it's just an indication, okay, bomb between these two fences and you can blow that up and go in there. So I like that. The soundtrack, as you said, I think it's the last Capcom game, right? It's the last one that Capcom made. I believe Capcom made it.
Yeah, it's the last one they made, because they did Four Swords first. Then they did this one in this series, because this is all one timeline of series. And then EAD finished up with Four Swords Adventures.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was at least the last or one of the last games that Capcom did, and I like Capcom's approach to making Zelda games, because they made them challenging, but they did a really good job to stay true to the previous games. I would love for Capcom to even just help Nintendo out, make some more Zelda games just like this. I'd be all right with that. Even help with there's been talks of remakes of some of these, because they did Link's Awakening. It'd be kind of cool to maybe see that again. To there's also heard rumor of possibly redoing A Link to the Past. They just need to leave that one alone. That game is perfect as is. But overall, this Minish Cap is definitely in my top 5 Zeldas of all time. Like, I know a lot of people love, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is their like top Zelda game. Like, this game is far above that for me because this was my younger generation. Like, well, not really my younger generation, but this is when I was like
20 years
when did it
younger.
come out? 2000s.
2004.
I was still young.
20
yeah.
years.
20 years. Well, I'm old now in my 40s, so it was almost 20 years ago. It's kind of sad. For sure. But I love the creativity. The kinship I didn't like the first time I ever played it. The kinstones that you have to like do with everyone. I hated that when I was younger. Whenever I started going through collectibles, my current playthrough, I'm just like, this is kind of cool. I like how it unlocks so many different things around the world. It's kind of random, and it like unlocks like certain areas. Like the gold ones, I believe, are the story ones that you have to get to unlock to proceed into the story, which is pretty cool. But yeah, this is definitely in my top 5 Zelda games of all time.
And before I give my overall thoughts, and I know I've asked you guys this question before because you've been on multiple Zeldas, but in case this is someone's first time listening to a Cartridge Club Legend of Zelda episode, do you prefer top-down 2D Zeldas or do you prefer the 3D Zeldas?
I honestly have a bigger connection to the 2D Zeldas because, like I said, I grew up in the portable realm. But simultaneously, like, there are things in the 3D games that you just can't do in 2D. The closest that this game gets to it is like the Palace of Winds boss battle, where you're kind of like free floating in the air and you're trying to fight them. That is something that was very unique at the time because you just fall off of the platform, you just fall off. But they do things like that in 3D a lot better. Like I'm thinking like the Colgera fight in Tears of the Kingdom, where you're floating up in the air and you're fighting the little ice thing. That is something that they can just do better in a 3D space, and I have to like take that into consideration. But overall, I would say 3D Zelda have just more going for them.
I prefer the 2D, the top down. That's what I grew up with. The very first Zelda game I ever played was the very first Zelda. Didn't care for the second one when that came out. I remember when it came out. I was one of those that, I didn't like it. But then once we got A Link to the Past, A Link to the Past is my number 1 favorite Zelda of all time. It is my number 1. So, and this is kind of fits the realm of, this is kind of like taking the Wind Waker art style and just giving me a kind of sort of A Link to the Past type of game out of this, and that's what I absolutely loved about it. So yeah, 2D is always up there, but I do put 3D right underneath because I do play like a lot of 3D games, like like I love the Assassin's Creed games, I love The Witcher, Dark Souls, like I love those type of games. And I think, as you said, Zelda has a lot more that they can do, especially we've seen that in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom to the max as far as what they can do with a 3D Zelda game, which started back, way back with like Ocarina and stuff. You can see as it progressed over the years. So it has a lot you can do that you can't do in 2D. So this is really a hard decision, but I'm just going to make that decision anyway and just say 2D just slightly above 3D.
Gotcha. For myself, I'll state again my general history is I believe I started with the first game as a kid, didn't enjoy it, didn't beat it, gave up right away. It was too hard for me to understand as a kid. My real, I guess, footwork or, entry into the series is with Ocarina of Time, which still is my favorite game of all time. But I do have, the love for the Zelda games, all the franchise, because I went back and started playing them all after Ocarina of Time. Now, with Minish Cap, I bought my copy. I didn't play it in 2004, so this was my first time actually playing it. I bought my copy probably about 15 years ago. So this was like my first time. Like I was debating playing it because I have it digitally for the Wii U and the 3DS. And but I decided, I think I want to play this on a CRT television and actually play my actual copy as opposed to playing a digital version. So I played with my original copy on this playthrough, and on my first time playing through this game. I'm kind of mixed up on it. I don't hate the game, but I don't love it. Yeah, and I'll probably sound critical. When I sound critical, I know it's gonna sound like I hate it. I didn't hate the game. I actually enjoyed it, but there's, you know what it is. It's the kinstones. The collecting the kinstones really dampened my love for the game. And it's only because it's the way I play Zelda games, that I have to get all the heart pieces. It's just something I always have to do, and some of them are tied to the kinstones, and it's not just that, but like you're right with all the collectathon. Like I kind of didn't think about it at the time, but just the task that I had to do for the kinstones, and the last heart piece I really needed was I had to play the figure game, where you had to trade in your seashells for. And it's a gamble too, right? So they'll tell you the percentage of your chance that you'll get like a duplicate on the action figure. When you start off, it tells you like a 99% chance that you'll get a duplicate once you trade in one, and then it goes down to 98 all the way to. It just gets to a point where you're gonna have to start spending a ton of kinstones because you're gonna start getting a lot of duplicates, and then you're gonna have to trade in like 90 seashells when you can only hold about 1,000. So you start burning through them real quick, which then you'll have to spam a couple things to get rupees to go sell them for more seashells, because you'll be out of finding them in the wild, like the big mass groups of seashells. So you have to then just keep doing that back and forth, go to the toy shop, empty out, go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that adds hours to the game. You're right, it probably is like a short game, but that collectathon probably added another 15 hours to the game for me, when I was probably pretty much. I probably was like, all right, I kind of just want to continue the story. I just want to do this, but I just know without the heart pieces that I had to have it. And there is if you do all the kinstones, you make all the trades, which I did. Believe me, I did them all. All you get is a dumb trophy from Tingle. That's it. You go see him and his brothers, and all the people in the wild and in the Minish. You do all the trades, even with the pets. All you get is a trophy from a Tingle trophy. That's it. It's kind of, now that you mention it, that the guy who directed this game did Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It makes sense with like the Korok seeds, because all you get is a gold turd in from the Kuroks, and then I think a platinum one in Tears of the Kingdom. Like, yep. There's no real reward. It's literally just that. There is some things that are held back by it. Like you need to do a few of them to get all the heart pieces, right? But like just going back to him and saying, "Hey, I did it all," and all you just get is a gold trophy. It's kind of a deflating. It's very deflating. But that's probably my biggest complaint about the game. That really, the padding is overkill. Everything else, yeah, it was pretty much great. It's top-down Zelda with a lot of taking a lot of things from the other games. Mostly, you're right, with mostly like Wind Waker. It seems like it's it's got the same art style as Wind Waker. If I'm gonna, I guess, complain about another thing, but older Zeldas did this as well. I guess I'm just not a fan of it. It seems like Zelda is in the game for like a minute. She comes, says hi to you, then she gets frozen, and that's it. There's no like her father's gone, and then you're just on the adventure trying to save her, and then she doesn't even help out in the final battle either. She's just like, go take care of it. It seems like it's missing a little of, I don't want to say heart. I don't know if that's the right word, but it seems like it's a little flat. Like it's missing like some Nintendo magic. And I'm a big fan of Capcom too, but it seems like, and it's not just the Zelda thing, it just seems like a little bit of that, because I don't know, and I could see this, the borrowing of or this leading to Ford Sword's Adventure. Every power upgrade you get, it adds another link to your adventure when you can charge up your sword on those certain pillars, and that makes for great puzzle solving and such. But it seems like it's, in my opinion, it seems like it's just a little missing something. The only thing I could say is the Nintendo magic, but
No, that's okay. That's okay. Because I think the thing is, I know like it with Zelda, like it would have been cool to have her in it more, but like there's a lot of Zelda games that she was barely in it. She was barely in the first one. She was barely. I don't even think she was even in Oracle of Ages or Seasons or Link's Awakening.
She's asleep in 2. She's not in Majora's Mask. Like I said, I know, but like it just seems like she's there, and then you never hear from her again. And I don't know. It just kind of I guess maybe so many games in, or it's kind of like
I think it's.
like, oh,
I think going back to it now because we're so used to Zelda being around and being more of a staple to the storyline. But back then, before everything that came out after, this was not anything different than what Nintendo was already doing with Zelda, because she wasn't always in there. Even in the second game, it's not the same Zelda. They even said that all the kingdoms named their princess Zelda in honor of Zelda for something like that along those lines. But so
Yeah, it's a good criticism. This has been a problem with the Zelda series for a long time, even going with Tears of the Kingdom, where she's there in the beginning, and then she's something else, and then she kind of comes back for the credit scene, and that's it. There's not really a whole lot going on with Zelda in this game, or most others, with the exception of, like, Ocarina of Time, a little bit of Link to the Past, but then it kind of happens there too. And A Link Between Worlds?
Skyward Sword. She's pretty prevalent in Skyward Sword.
Yeah, but then she disappears again with Sheik and everything like that. So
yeah, she's still in and out
for
though.
Like half the game.
But I think she might be in Skyward Sword the most out of all of them.
I would agree.
I'd have to do a runtime on all of it just to confirm, but it feels like she's in that one the most. Maybe a little bit of Wind Waker, because I mean technically she's Tetra.
Yeah.
So I mean she's still there.
This is, like I was saying, it's a perfect beginner Zelda game because it has all the conventions, including that dumb one. So if you're just getting started into the Zelda series, it being a little flat, the bosses not being that challenging until you get to the end, the puzzles being solvable, demanding, but not impossible or making you want to stop and come back to it, I feel that just makes it like that great entry point into the series.
I was going to say, I think one of the biggest, charms that's meant to be in Minish Cap, like what's supposed to be the most charming, is I think the Picori, them as a race, they remind me so much of the Smurfs that they're caring. They would just want to protect humanity. You get to shrink down as one of them. I think that was the main focus of trying to what was to bring the heart to the game. Outside of that, I do agree that it does kind of sort of fall flat on where the heart is with, Zelda and Link's own quest. I think the heart is mostly just with the Picori people themselves.
I want to mention something because you just kind of mentioned the dungeons. You're right. I want to say the dungeons for the most part are pretty easy until that last one, the wind one. It seemed like there was definitely a difficulty spike jump. And even the final boss against Vani, right? Is that Vani? Is his name? Vanti, yeah. It seems like that's when it majorly spikes right at the end, and it made me glad that I got all the heart pieces. Now there's plenty of options to get health, and you can always do it that way too. But I didn't die, but I know I got my health down a bunch too close. But especially the last 2 fights. I mean, I was tapping into my fairy jars. But yeah, there was definitely. Did anyone else experience the difficulty spike at this?
Oh yeah. It stopped me from playing it for a while. Whenever I first started playing this game, I got all the way to Vati, and then I just couldn't beat him back then because I mean I wasn't as good as video games back then as I am now because I've played so many things since 2004 to now. I just keep getting better and better, although I start sucking at other games that I used to be good at, such as Mega Man. But But I got to that point too, and then I had to actually put the game down for a while before I had to go back and then finally fight Vati again to finally beat him the first time I ever finished it. So I do agree with you. There is that difficulty spike jumping to that final boss. Here you go.
Yeah, there's definitely a difficulty spike there, and I don't think it has too much to do with the way the fight is designed. It's the limitations of the Game Boy Advance, and that you only have 2 face buttons, so you're constantly having to go into menus and switch out your items and everything like that. That just made the game more tedious than it had to be. But that's not the fault of the game itself. It's the fault of the Game Boy Advance, and it probably should have been designed with 4 face buttons in the first place.
That's a very, very good point. I didn't even consider that, but you're right, because you have to pause to keep switching out your weapons. And I'll say that Wind Temple boss fight, I think that one might even give me more harder time than fighting Vadi, just because it's just how you're fighting like on 2 like manatees, not manatees, mana rays. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You're fighting like 2 mana rays in the sky, right? Where you have to keep going off on one. I kept falling off and getting back up, and then you have to charge up till you have multiple links to go swap the eyes, so you can mash those eyes and go back and forth. Just that was, and maybe that was a little bit of. And granted, I'm not in the sky, but it's adding to the anxiety of like falling. So I mean, kudos to the design basically, because it definitely kind of triggered something inside me during the boss fight when other ones didn't, like fighting a giant green blob monster.
The Chew, yeah,
the choo-choos, right? The big green choo-choo does nothing. That's just a big blob thing.
I thought that was fun though. That was like a great introductory boss fight because it shows how when you're in Minish form, how dangerous something that's super basic that you can hit like twice with your sword can be to something much smaller. I felt that was a good use of like scale and showing you how different this world is from a different point of view.
Should we stick with boss talk real quick here? Because I think I wanted to mention, if we're talking about bosses, I want to mention that Mazel boss. I went from thinking it was going to be very much a... And Zelda games do this too, where a lot of the bosses are bosses from another game, and you're like, oh, I've done this before. But that one, it looks like it's got 2 giant hands, right? Where I believe you have to hit him in the hands, and then you have to go inside him. You have to shrink down and then go inside him. Which I was like, okay, this is a creative, different twist, and I enjoyed that boss fight a lot more than like the big Octorok fight.
Yeah, I mean, the big Octorok fight was like, if you don't remember how to do it, it's a little intense. But then once you figure out, like, oh, I just have to light his tail on fire, then it's a lot more fun. But I can understand it being a little boring, comparatively.
Well, it seems like, like the Gleelock fight, and it seems like that one seems like it's a classic, seen it before Zelda boss fight. But then you get like something creative like the giant, mana ray in the sky fight, or the
York.
Yeah, like you said, like then you're like, all right, this is cool and different. That's something I always look for, what makes the Zelda game different in the franchise, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is something I remember from this fight. I
do like the difference, the creativeness that they did with the different boss fights. Even the final fight with Vadi was definitely unique with the multiple phases that you had to go through. One phase was almost like a bullet hell, and you got to get through that. But I thought it was kind of cool because as much as I love A Link to the Past, it felt like a lot of the bosses were just a bunch of eyeballs. That's really all it was just a bunch of eyeballs. And being a little different and refreshing with Minish Cap, I would have liked the bosses maybe to be a little more challenging. I would like more dungeons in Minish Cap. Maybe that would have made it even more creative, because it was a short game. If you're not focused on like getting all the heart pieces, you can blow through the game really quickly. But like the boss fights themselves, I thought they were creative. Easy or not, they were still relatively creative overall.
Maybe it's the theme of the game, because it's even a small Hyrule. Though Hyrule's not very big. Small Hyrule, you get to reduce yourself to being small. They go to the Minish areas or the Picori areas, and smaller dungeons in general. So maybe it's just kind of just a general theme for the whole game, was that it's a smaller game,
which is fine because it's a portable game.
Yeah,
like this was meant to be played on a Game Boy Advance with no backlit screen while you're sitting in the back of the car waiting for lights to go by you. Like, that's what this game is designed to be, or designed to be at its absolute basis form. Sure, there were things like the Game Boy player for the GameCube, and I think the SP was out by the time this was out, because this was like, what, a year before the DS premiered? So, like, those things did exist, but they knew that wasn't their baseline customer. They had to design it for what their majority of their install base is. So, I feel like it was purposely designed to be smaller, shorter, to fit with like people who are using original Game Boy Advance hardware.
Now I'm going to ask a question. Do both of you feel that this game could have been even better if it had been designed for a console rather than a handheld? If they would have done more with it, like pushing the limitations of whichever, like if they were doing it on the modern console at the time, pushing it to that limit further.
I don't think so, because Force Words Adventures did eventually exist, and that was essentially Minish Cap pushed to its limits. And while visually it's better, and there's a little more variation in the boss fights, which oddly enough, the last boss fight takes place at the same Palace of Winds, which is interesting. I don't feel like it's dramatically different. Like, not enough for me to say that it's pushed to its limits or that Minish Cap isn't doing anything that Force Words Adventures was. Aside, like, obviously the multiplayer aspect.
I'll slightly disagree. Only for the fact that I think we could have mapped the buttons a little bit more with the because it's a good looking game. It's a good looking game. I mean, I played it on the GameCube add-on so I played on my CRT, and it's a good looking game. So graphically, it's not going to get pushed any difference, but I think maybe some slight gameplay tweaks probably would have helped. You know, one thing that just stands out for me wise that kind of what I'm doing the final fight against Body was there's a phase in it where he pushes his monster arm to the ground and it kind of comes up, and you have to use your cane to turn it into like a tower. So then you have to go shrink down, and then you can go inside the arm to fight the little creatures inside. And then once you defeat that, then he loses his arm.
Yeah.
But my point is, it kept happening to me because I'm trying to, as an example, you can't use your speed boot to run faster to his arm. So I'm rolling in my mini form. I'm trying to pressing A to do the mini roll to get faster to his arm. And I kept morphing back to being adult-sized Link. And it happened at least 3 or 4 times in that fight where I'm like, and you have to go shrink back down, roll. And I do it numerous times where I rolled too soon next to the shrink tower. So yeah, I would say I think slight little, there would have been improvements if it was made for the GameCube as opposed for the Game Boy Advance.
I'm glad the rolling issue wasn't just me. It's happened to me multiple times trying to just get there and I'll crap them big again.
Yeah.
I was meaning more so like limitations on game design versus like hardware limitations, which, yeah, definitely the Game Boy Advance has, having 4 total buttons. So
I know I kind of mentioned this before, but where does this, like I asked you guys, like if you're more of a 2D Zelda or something like that, but so I know, Adam, you said it's in your top 5 Zeldas, but where do you rank this out of the 2D Zeldas, or the portable Zeldas, if you will? Is this the top? Is it middle? Number 2?
Link to the Past is definitely the top.
Yeah.
I would have to say right underneath that would probably have to be A Link Between Worlds.
Okay.
Then I would probably like venture into probably maybe Minish Cap would hit this one. Be right after that. I don't know. I've never fully played through Oracle of Ages and Seasons completely, so it's hard for me to want to say I want to put Minish Cap above or below those. They're fantastic games, but until I actually finish either one of them, again, what holds me back and I kind of get off of Oracle of Ages and Seasons is the fact that the limitation of menu swap, menu back, menu swap, menu back, to where that's what I loved about Link's Awakening's remake is that was made better. than going in and out of your menu just to switch an item, just to jump over like a cliff or like a gap, just to switch back to something else, because then you have to fight something there with a different weapon. So I don't know. Until I finish Oracle of Ages and Seasons, I would probably say Minish Cap will go above those, as it's as my number 3.
Those are both Capcom games too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, I have much more of a connection to Oracle of Ages and Seasons than I do to Minish Cap. It's a game that I had for a lot longer period of time, and at a time in my life that I was playing more portable games. By 2004, I was in high school and like doing sports and doing a whole bunch of other things, so I wasn't really as focused in it. Like, I wanted to play the new Zelda game, but just as quickly I wanted to get back to playing Grand Theft Auto, because it was that time frame in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So for me, this one just never has that nostalgia connection that I do with like Oracle Ages and Seasons or even Link's Awakening in terms of portable games. So it's not going to rank that highly for me, even though I am praising it for all of the right reasons. It's definitely doesn't have that connection for me. Sure. And that's just a personal thing. That's 100% a bias.
Yep.
So out of those 3, it's like the third. But like, I'd still say it's better than Four Swords, which was the other like portable one that they ended up making. And I don't know where I'd rank it against like A Link Between Worlds, because that game feels so completely unique. It's got those 3D aspects and the 2D aspect. But I'd probably say Link Between Worlds would be number 1. And then we would go with Oracle games, then Awakening, then Minish Cap for me. And it's not to say that there's anything bad about them. They're all great games. There aren't really bad Zelda games, in my experience, that are at least officially made by Nintendo.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for the Philips CDI games, but most people I think can. That still should be something Nintendo releases like on their digital store. I think they're panned and everything like that, but just for the fact, just for people to play that Zelda, just to try out for fun. They own the rights to it, even if it's terrible. For me, I think Link Between Worlds is still probably my top 2D Zelda, top-down 2D Zelda, followed by Link to the Past. I really enjoyed Link's Awakening. Yeah, Link's Awakening I really, really enjoyed. Even though I played it, I didn't play it anywhere until Cartridge Club Portable played it. That's like the first time I ever dabbled with that one. But I really enjoyed that one a lot. That one, when I say I think this one's missing a little of the Nintendo heart, I think that one has it. Even though it has its limitations, I don't. It still feels like a Zelda game to me. It feels maybe closer to, and I know it's in that same timeline of Link to the Past, but I think Link's Awakening is above Minish Cap in my opinion, and then I'd probably go Minish Cap after that. I still have yet to. Go ahead.
Are you tying both Link's Awakening together, remake versus original, or are you saying you put the remake right there and then?
No, I would say I would say they were pretty close to each other. I almost categorize them differently because I've beaten them both and I've played them both. I'm not going to rank those two at the moment because I don't want to put that thought in my head. I haven't thought about this part. But if I'm going to go, because that one's got like 3D aspects to it, so I'm just going to associate that differently from this group. I'm going to, even though it's not, I'm for the sake I'm going to. I'm going to say I have Link's Awakening original Game Boy DX version. That's the version I played with some color, So that's the version I played, and I'll go with that, and then I'll go with Minish Cap. I've yet to play the Oracle games as well, but I've heard good things, and I do want to play them. So we still have plenty more Zelda games to play here in the Cartridge Club, so count on that down the road. Unfortunately, Skyward Sword is on that list as well, too. But
That's not unfortunate. I'll look forward to that one.
I love Skyward Sword.
So do I.
I look forward to talking about it and debating you guys on it, along with Captain Algebra. But let's get back to this game for just a minute here. One thing that also stands out about this game, and it almost also probably makes it not feel like a Zelda game, is that there is no Ganon whatsoever. And I know you could say Skyward Sword has the same kind of thing going on, Demise, but in I know, I think Adam, I think you prefer the fact that this one does something different and goes with Vadi as like a villain, but and I believe me, I think it's neat and different, but for some reason that there's no connection to it kind of throws me off. That there's no connection maybe to the Triforce, or it's just he's just an apprentice for Elzo. Is that the hat's name?
Enzo.
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 Enzo. He's just his apprentice, but once he gets a wishing cap, he becomes evil and he decides he's going to take over the world. So do you like that aspect of it, that there's no Ganon connection?
I'm fine with no Ganon. I would have liked to see. I would have preferred to see like a connection to at least the Triforce, to like maybe the power that Vadi's searching is connected to the Triforce in some way. Whether it's some sort of wished item that came from someone who used the Triforce before, it's just something interesting. I do like the fact that it doesn't have Ganon. I don't think every Zelda game needs Ganon. I don't think he has to be the number one villain all the time. I feel the same with Mario. I don't think Koopa should be always the villain. Because in a sense, it just becomes redundant, and you're just getting a recycled story over and over. This person versus this person, this person versus this person, just over and over. That it's nice to have a different variety, a different villain that's there. I mean, I'm not saying we don't need Ganon. We need Ganon in games, but I don't think since there's like 20 some Zelda games, I don't think Ganon needs to be the villain in all 20 games, or however many there are now, in every single game. So yeah, I do prefer that it is mixed up with different villains. It is also the first Zelda game that the Master Sword is not a part of the storyline, which also feels that a little bit of disconnection because you get the Pokori Blade instead of the Master Sword.
Good point.
Yeah, like I don't really have that same issue with it not feeling like a Zelda game because there's no Ganon, no Master Sword, or anything like that. Because I know later on in Four Swords Adventures, Ganon is a part of it, and he has been manipulating Vati. Like there's like a whole storyline about how Ganon has actually been behind the whole darn thing. So if you play the entire series from beginning to end, then you get that Ganon connection. This is a very setup piece for that story, which is fine. I don't mind that it's a little bit different in that way. I feel like Ganon would have maybe tried to make this game a little bit bigger than it was. We would have to do more like Dark World stuff or something like that to really make Ganon feel a part of it, where I don't really see where he fits into the story that they were creating.
That's a good point. I forgot about the sword connection too, because this takes place, according to the Zelda Encyclopedia, this takes place as like the second game in the franchise. So it's I always associate it like Skyward kind of starts the legacy kind of the Master Sword, right, that it gets passed down through generations, but it's not in this one. And I kind of associate the hat then, I guess, with this game. If I'm going to take anything away from this game, is that the classic green hat that Link wears comes from this game, despite it being a magical wizard that looks like a bird that talks to you, and it's kind of very much the classic Zelda trope of annoying partner, like a Kazooie for you, if you will, like from Banjo-Kazooie, or like Navi a little bit, where the hey listen kind of thing. But it just seems, and maybe it's the limitations to the game and more planned on the road, that like Vadi needed more of a backstory. I don't know. I mean, I guess older Zeldas didn't really have it. It was just evil Ganon, go kill, right? I guess just at this point, if this isn't your first Zelda, it might be something that stands out to you. I do like, not every Zelda game needs the Ganon boss. Like I think Majora's Mask works great with like Skull Kid as the thing. It just seems like you're giving me 60% of a Zelda game or 70% of a Zelda game, when if you're gonna do it, it's almost like you might as well just go completely different and do more things completely different. That's what I get. I guess I get the kind of vibe from this game that it seems like they maybe they had to stick into a certain realm of like keeping all of these Zelda things as opposed to exploring and trying something completely different. But I just kind of wished, I guess, we got a little bit more of like Vadi, who would make some tick, who makes them bad and evil, besides just turning everyone into like statues.
Yeah, I agree. I think they could have given us more Vati because you think about it, by the time Minish Cap came out, there still were some heavy story-driven Zelda games. Not super heavy, but just enough, telling you enough about the story and some backstory about what's going on, to where Minish Cap kind of just didn't really add that additional dialogue in there. Because you go back to A Link to the Past, that game is very story-driven. Like when you first start that, you're going through dialogue after dialogue after dialogue after dialogue. That they could have added maybe more of that to Minish Cap, especially with Vadi. Maybe when he first turns Princess Zelda into stone, he just goes on this rant, gives you kind of more of an idea of who he is, what he was doing. But I agree with you. I would have liked to see more backstory with Vadi. I would like to see him again in a Zelda game where they will touch up on more of his backstory. That would be fantastic to see as well.
I guess the real backstory for him is just that he kind of betrayed his master. I kind of guess I wish I got more of that. Like, did his master betray him? And I guess, I don't know, I haven't played Four Swords Adventure. Maybe we play that instead of Skyward Sword. But, you know, I guess I kind of wanted more of that. You know, why did he go bad? If he was this guy's apprentice and under his wing and...
Just wanted the ultimate power. I guess maybe it's the Harry Potter route with Voldemort.
Yeah, they're both wizards, right? So
yeah,
there you go.
I wish there was more from Eslo in that, because he seems to be able to talk about everything else, like every other Zelda companion that slightly annoys you.
Mm-hmm.
But he never mentions anything important until you have to for progression of the game. Which if there's a little bit more around that, like, oh, beware of this like little magical thing. I had an apprentice once that, kind of did something bad on this path or something like that. Like, just even hints would have been something. But we didn't really get that.
That's where I think this game could have been better if it were put on like a console. Because a handheld, again, you're playing in the back of your car, waiting for your parents to take you to your grandparents' house or whatever. That it's just, you're meant to play it in small bursts, and it was never meant to just sit there and just like have this massive long storyline. It's just go collect the pieces, enjoy a bit of a story, but they never get far in depth with it. I think if this was a Super Nintendo game, or if it was put on like a modern console where someone's going to sit glued to the TV for hours, that I think it could have been better because they would have put probably more time into telling a bigger story.
Now, the things that also make it different that I think actually kind of stood out about it are some of the equipment. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But like, I don't recall using like mole hands before to dig through like walls and dirt. I thought that was kind of creative and different. And the flippers that I know you could say, like, I think there's swimming in
You get flippers in the Link to the Past.
in Link to the Past too. Okay.
Yeah, you get the Zora equipment.
Yeah, I guess like I guess spamming through the water quickly. I kind of just associated to get to the areas and everything like that. I always thought that's kind of neat, to where I didn't have to walk across the bridge. I could just quickly pan across without having to change and put them on.
And the quick travel system with the Ocarina of Wind.
Mm-hmm.
That was really nice.
As we mentioned, sounds like the warp whistle from Super Mario Bros. 3, which I thought that was the first thing that caught my eye as soon as that happened. Now, some of the upgrades I think are a little overkill. By that I mean like the quiver bag, like the fourth sized quiver bag holds like 100 arrows, and I don't think at any point I got below like 70. And maybe I wasn't using it correctly, but I was probably using like the boomerang more. I don't recall the sword like ever like being more powerful. Every upgrade, like I don't recall it like reducing hits to kill like the enemies. It seemed like it was the same amount of damage, with maybe the exception of switching from the Smith sword to like the first level up. It seems like all the swords in general, and I could be wrong, but they seem. It just seems like it took like the same amount of swipes to kill the villains. Like the only upgrade it really was giving you another Link ability to kill things, or to solve puzzles, if you will.
Yeah, and I feel like that was more of like a tie to the original Zelda, because you don't really get a more powerful sword, so to speak, in Zelda 1 until the very end. Depending on how you play, because you can play Zelda 1 however the hell you want, which is kind of the beauty of that game. But you never feel totally more powerful than what you're fighting against. You just had to strategize better. And I feel like that carried over to this game, that sort of design mentality.
I felt that that's what they were trying to do, like what they were doing with Minish Cap is they were trying to give you the best aspects of all the like the 2D Zelda games up until that point. You had a bit of the Zelda 1 in there, you had a bit of A Link to the Past in there, a little bit of the Oracle games were like dashed around in there. I think that was kind of the point, to just kind of still make it try to feel as close to Zelda as you can while trying to do your own thing with it.
You know what's kind of unique about like this period of Zelda is Nintendo really loved the Toon Link gimmick for a while, and I remember that's the one that bothered me a lot. You know, it carried over into, I guess, Four Swords Adventures and the Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Like, it stuck around for quite a while. They never changed that design. They really liked that design. Like I said, it bothered me at first because it wasn't mature, angry Link, and that's what I wanted. But I'll give it credit. The strategy guide that I have for this game comes with the announcement poster for Twilight Princess. So it's got like pictures of the trail from that trailer, what they revealed in 2006. Maybe it's 2004, I guess, because this game came out in 2004. But it's got like the reveal trailer for Twilight Princess in it, saying like the future of Zelda. I don't know. It's just unique to me that they really love this design for Zelda, that they stuck with it. So
I remember Zelda being announced, but I also remember being delayed for like almost 5 years or something like that too. So
you can thank the Wii for that. They knew the Wii was coming and they were holding off on that one. So the GameCube was a dead console at that point.
The Wii was nothing more than a GameCube and another GameCube duct taped together
with motion controls.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can blame the Wii, but at the same time, the game was announced whenever the Cube was in its prime. It just didn't get to the point of release until the Wii.
Yeah,
and we're still waiting for that Metroid Prime 4 that was announced when the Switch dropped. You know, we'll get that on the.
That's a great comparison, because that was announced. Geez, then. For people who used to participate a lot in Cartridge Club Hangouts, we took a bet when Metroid Prime 4 was coming out, and Fitna, I think, was the closest to it, and I think he said 2022 or 2023, something like that, and still no announcements yet. So yeah, and granted, we know I had to do a restart, but that's just like a perfect comparison where that was supposed to come out years ago. And it still is not anywhere been close to being coming out. So not even a damn trailer.
Had the same problem too.
We'll get the HD.
It was like what originally announced when Wind Waker HD released.
What was that?
2013.
What was that?
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
it was announced like right before Wind Waker HD release. So it was like 4 years.
Yeah, I remember those trailers too. But I said we at least had trailers. All we have is like a teaser announcement for Metroid Prime 4. So, yeah, the game's probably dead.
We'll get
they got retro back on it.
2 and 3 before we get 4.
No, didn't they did release the trilogy, didn't they?
No, they just did Metroid Prime 1 remastered.
That's right.
Which, honestly, fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we haven't covered? Or is there something you want to talk about that we should probably talk about?
Oh, we didn't talk about favorite temple or least favorite temple. We kind of glazed over temples in general.
We can talk about that.
I mean, there's not really a whole lot to say.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one that really always stands out to me is the Wind Temple, right?
Yeah.
that one, out of all the temples, I think if we're gonna talk all about the temples, I'm gonna the only one that really and maybe it's because it's the last one played, but the one that really stands the most out to me is the Wind Temple in the sky. That one was
Yeah.
very unique and different. And I'll say this: I remember the Ice Temple because I hate ice levels and snow levels in games. Absolutely, like people hate swimming levels or water levels in games. That don't bother me none. I actually enjoy water levels in games. Ice levels, I hate them. I hate them. I hate the less, no traction, slipping around and falling. I've hated it since Mega Man.
Yeah, I get it.
So, but out of all the ones that were unique and different for me, the Palace of Winds is like the one that stands out the most out of all the temples, and it's the one that's most memorable because it felt different, unique, and I kind of wish. And like I said, there's only a few of them in this game. I kind of wish we got more uniqueness in that, and maybe there's more of a, I don't know, the development time crunch and what they had to do. Maybe it was a smaller team. I would have thought if they could have done more of that, this game probably would be higher on my list. Just unique ability, not unique abilities, but like unique dungeons, things that make it stand out from other Zelda games.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say like the first temple, the first dungeon, the forest dungeon, has a lot of that same vibe where you get like how this game's mechanics towards dungeons are going to work. Like they have the classic push and pull, but then you have like the mushrooms to launch yourself. You get the bag of wind to be able to like pull in like the spider webs and things to be able to move around. You have the rotating mode 7 barrel to get to different parts of the temple. Like I think it wasn't a lot of screens. Like in terms of an actual like dungeon design, it's very small, but they reuse assets in a very clever way where there's no part of that dungeon that's just like an empty room for you to walk by or just collect rupees from over and over again. It's just everything is just very succinct. And I feel like that is probably one of the more cleverly designed ones because it gets you set up for all the rest of them. The problem is that the rest of them are kind of the same thing all the way up until you get to the Palace of Winds.
Adam, how do you feel about that?
No, I agree. I think the Palace of the Winds is the one that stands out the most. I think that's the one where you first starts to see the difficulty of the game because up until that point, it really wasn't challenging. The most challenging was running around in circles trying to figure out what to do next, not exactly playing the game, just where to go. And I think as far as dungeons, that is the most memorable and the most challenging dungeon that the game offered.
And you mentioned about reusing a lot of assets. Like, I would love to talk about the music for this game, but it just uses a lot of music that we've heard before. It's not something like Wind Waker or Ocarina of Time, where the music's very important to the theme of the game. Let's just say they're probably not going to be playing too many songs from Minish Cap on the Zelda Orchestra Tour. It's just a lot of tracks you've heard before, and they'll probably just use like Link to the Past in the background or Ocarina of Time or some other previous games. So
yeah, like there aren't a whole lot of original tracks here. Like their version of Hyrule Town is definitely different, and anything to do with like the Minish Forest is extremely different. But everything else feels so samey, but with that Game Boy Advance like French horn thing that they have going on in that era that Pokemon fell into as well. Like it has its own unique sound vibe to it that no other Zelda soundtrack really replicates. So even tunes we've heard before, like, Zelda's theme and things like that, they all just sound slightly different enough that they feel fresh, but it's just like hearing a cover band.
Well, it's like slightly out of tune, just one little turn out of tune.
Yeah,
just so it's different.
Add an oboe in there for no reason.
Yeah. May the Force be with you and the Cartridge Club as we play Jedi Fallen Order for the month of May. If you're playing along and want to discuss the game with us, make sure to let us know by using the hashtag Cartridge Club on whatever social media platform you frequent. For those of you who want to get a head start on June's game of the month, we'll be playing Warcraft Rebel. July's game of the month will be Conker's Bad Fur Day. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, please reach out to us. We're always looking forward to having new community members on to talk about the games they love. To those of you interested in supporting the club beyond a review on the podcast app of your choice, I'd like to mention that the club is entirely funded by pledges made from members of our community. We are extremely grateful to those supporters, and if you're interested in becoming one of them, please look on how you can do so at patreon.com/Cartridge Club. So, Stump, final thoughts on The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, and do you have any recommendations? Any, like, if you were a fan of Minish Cap, what other ones would you play next, or other games unrelated to the Zelda franchise would you recommend?
Yeah, so I think that Minish Cap is a great game. It is exactly what it sets up so to be, which is a entry point into the Zelda series for the Game Boy Advance crowd. I feel that it's cleverly designed and uses a lot of assets in unique ways, so that way you can go ahead and traverse it and be able to experience it in a quick and efficient manner. It does have some issues that plagued a lot of games at the time with collectathons and trading and RNG systems if you want to get absolutely everything and complete the game. But if you're just looking to beat the game and just finish it, this is possibly the best entry point into Zelda you can get. For other games that are like that, I would suggest Link's Awakening, either the DX version or the Switch version, just because they are both pretty much exactly the same, except just one looks nicer. Or moving on to a 3D Zelda, like I would say Ocarina of Time, just because it's going to give you a little bit more than this game does, while feeling very familiar in terms of like how bright it is and how your characters act and interact with each other. Like there is dialogue in between characters, like in constant, characters that we've seen before all appear in this game. So, you got Lala and Ranch and everything like that. Like everything feels very connected. And I feel that Ocarina of Time, which even in the Zelda timeline, after Four Swords, is the next game in the timeline. It'd be a nice place to keep going and see how you feel about a grander Zelda adventure after, settling in with this one.
I forgot to make one point though too. I thought it was pretty unique and different about that. The three sages are essentially living in Hyrule, right? And they're looking for a home. Sorry, just thought of it now. But the weird thing is too, you can only build a home for two of them, and you have your choice of which two get a home. Otherwise, the third one has to live in the hotel. So, sorry, I know it's out of place, but not you mention it because like the opening of Ocarina of Time is about Din, Naru, and whatever the last one is, right? And they're just there and they're just looking for a home to hang their underwear outside, right? So.
Well, is the one that gets the hotel? Is that the one that is the most successful? The one you like the most? Because then they can run it as a business. They're gonna probably be more happy.
Well, the one that you leave in a hotel is the only one that won't give you they have like a power that they can give you. So the one that you choose to live in the hotel, you cannot get their power. You get a
That's because you give them the power of the hotel. They don't need to give you anything.
They don't want to pay rent anymore, I guess, or at least they want to pay Gorman. They want to live in one of his high quality homes. Anyways, Adam, what are your final thoughts on Minish Cap, and do you have any recommendations?
Minish Cap is still, like I said, is still one of my favorite Zelda games. I know it has its limitations. I accept that. I accept that it's a shorter game, and I accept it because I know it was meant to be a handheld. I think the game could have been better had it been on a console, as I've said multiple times during the podcast. But it's still high up there. As far as I do agree, I think this, if you've never played a 2D Zelda and your first 2D Zelda game, I think Minish Cap has that difficulty of you adjusting from, say if you've already played a 3D Zelda, but you've never done 2D, it helps you migrate into the 2D, and it gives you a starting point where it's not overly difficult. It has its difficulty spikes toward the end, but it's a good segue into then moving on to A Link to the Past, moving on to A Link Between Worlds, fitting in Four Swords somewhere along the lines. definitely doing Link's Awakening, either version, your choice. I'm more partial to, I like to remake more because it just feels like it's easier to play. As far as like swapping through menus and everything was a lot more fun, which I hope they do. If they ever remake Oracle of Ages and Seasons, just give us better menu swapping. Same with Minish Cap. But I think it's a good entry point. As far as recommendations, if you want to play something like Zelda that is not on Nintendo, I recommend playing the first Alunja if you can ever find it, or playing a newer game that's come out that not a lot of people talk about, but Oceanhorn 1 and 2 are very Wind Waker-ish 2D Zelda type games. So that'd be my recommendations. But I do recommend someone playing Minish Cap and starting if it's a great game.
All right, my final overall thoughts on the Minish Cap. I would recommend this. I would recommend that you not 100% this game, unless you are. It's just because that's what you do for every Zelda game. You probably have a much better experience than I did. I still like the game, but like I said, just all the kinstones and the fact that it is a little. Some of them are. It's not guaranteed all of them are gonna get you in the same exact item and location. It's sometimes just gonna be like, oh, you're gonna get I think all the hard pieces are kind of the same spot, but I think like if you're going for like the coins or shells or whatever, it's behind like a fairy fountain or something like that. Like it's a little random here and there. I would avoid you not doing it because it literally is not worth the reward and the trophy. But if you are going for the hard pieces, then yeah, have fun with that. It does pad on the game long. I think I did look before I even started this game that I think how long to beat has to this game about around 11 hours. I know with 100%ing this one, I've way over exceeded that. I probably did about close to 30. And like I said, the padding I think kind of dampened my enjoyment of the game more than anything. And so I would recommend you just don't. I would recommend just getting the hard pieces you find along the way and just playing the game. Don't do everything. Just play the game. Recommendations. This game kind of reminded me a little bit of Beyond Oasis, which is another Cartridge Club game, which is for the Sega Genesis. I just got the same kind of vibe a little bit from it, just playing it. So that if you want to recommend anything like that, if you like this style of Zelda-esque game and you want something Sega-ish, play Beyond Oasis and then play this. Then go back and listen to that episode, which I also am on co-hosting. So with that being said, that's the show, everyone. But before I go, I want to give a shout out to my guests who helped me out with this episode. So Stump, where can we find you online?
Reddit and Discord at this point. That's it. Just at StumptownRetro.
Not a bad place to be at this point. Adam, where can we find you online?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Atomic Bomb 1980 on all platforms. And then if you really want to find me and talk to me and hang out with me, I stream a few nights a week on Twitch. Come hang out with me, pop into my channels. I know Rocket, you've been in there hanging out with me, watching me play stuff. That's where you'll find me the most, is streaming.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here. As for myself, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram with the same handle of ItsRocketSauce. I'm also in the Cartridge Club Discord, so you can also find me on there. But with that being said, that's the show, everybody. See you night.